So, and now, please give it up for Pietro Boselli!
Oh, yes. That's good, that's good. All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you for the kind introduction. It's already given you a bit of a background. My life has been really filled with very diverse things. I started working when I was 6 or 7 years old, not in a sweatshop. I was a model. My first job was an Armani Junior campaign in Milan. And modeling has always been part of my life, and I grew up in fashion. But I always taken it for granted. I've always been very observant, but growing up into fashion, I never realized how much I absorbed from that world. So when I was 18, I moved to London to study engineering, and I pursued an academic career. I did my PhD, and like you said, I was a lecturer at UCL for 5 years. And I was going about my daily nerdy life. I didn't think that the fact that I was both a model and an academic could have been of interest, but apparently it was. And this is how my career in social media started, with a few of my students making fan pages, funnily enough. And so I found myself with a big audience, but I didn't know what to do with it. And I decided to sort of combine all of my passions. So the design and engineering component, the fashion component, and the fitness. I've always been really passionate about it. I used to be a competitive swimmer and then a triathlete. I've done a lot of fitness competitions as well. And I wanted to create something that would encapsulate all of this. But of course, given that I'm an engineer, I wanted to have a sustainable angle to it, because in engineering, what we're trying always to do is to make the most efficient use of the resources that we have. And for this precise reason, I decided to make a premium sportswear brand that would be made ethically. So right at the beginning, I had the idea, and I was thinking, okay, maybe I could find some investors, and there was a lot of interest, especially from Chinese investors, who, however, wanted me to produce everything in China. And for me, it was very important to maintain control over my production and to have control over the ethics of it. So I decided to stick with just making something small, with no investment, and step by step. And what I found out is actually that in Italy, there is an amazing amount of state-of-the-art manufacturers that produce recycled yarn. Even yarn that historically has been very challenging, such as nylon. And obviously the classic recycled PET. The challenge for a small startup like mine was that it was actually very difficult to get these textile manufacturers to actually respond to you, because you don't exist, you're not in the radar. So I just started making the first collection, and then based on that, I now had a brand, and I decided to start requesting from these manufacturers that they would produce the kind of textile that I needed. And sportswear actually lends itself particularly well to being sustainable, because most of the sportswear is made of synthetic fibers, such as polyester or polyamide. Polyester is the same molecule as the PET bottles, so polyethylene terephthalate, and then polyamide is just nylon. Nylon historically has been very difficult to recycle, but now there are actually manufacturers that can recycle nylon from existing nylons. So for example, fishing nets, which currently account for 46% of ocean plastic pollution. It's just abandoned fishing gear, which eventually disintegrates in the ocean. So it's very important to obviously create consumer awareness in terms of recycling and so on. But as a business, I feel like it's very important to create a market for recycled products. And so the strategy was to create a brand that was perceived as really high fashion, and that was the advantage they had is all the connection I had in fashion, the photographers, the models, and so on, to create that image. Because people want to buy a product that is cool. They want to feel good, they want to look good, and obviously the second layer of the narrative has to be that it's sustainable. because the point here is to shift the perception of the recycled products, which historically has been perceived as a lower quality product, but obviously is not as such anymore because we have the technology. Actually, the technology for recycling plastic existed for a long time, but currently is very expensive compared to using virgin petroleum. So this is why it's important to create a market for recycled products that will eventually drive down the cost of recycling as opposed to using virgin petroleum, and then shifting the consumer perception so that the recycled products are actually perceived as high quality. The other aspect of what I wanted to talk about is how you promote such a brand starting from zero. The first idea that I had was, obviously, I had a big reach on social media, and I thought, that might actually help. But in fact, it's not like that at all. The classic influencer marketing strategy, or the classic strategy for an influencer to sell something online is merchandise. And this is not what I wanted to do. I wanted to create an actual fashion brand, an actual ethically made product that would be independently perceived as high quality. So when people shop for high quality, they shop product first. They don't care about who made it. So the biggest, obviously, fashion names started off by proposing to the market a high quality product, and eventually their name got associated with a high quality product. When you start off with already an audience, you have to sort of separate the two things. So this is why I didn't call my brand with my own name, because I wanted to create an independent body that would be eventually perceived as high quality. And I think this is actually a challenge, because obviously right now my brand is obviously highly associated with my figure, and eventually it's difficult to convert and do the next step where people see it as an independent thing.